The New World by S.Z. Batten. The New World Order. Sorry, the Library of University of California, Riverside, gift by Dr. Gordon Watkins. I'm Gordon S.W. Watkins, University of California, digitized by Microsoft, the New World Order, digitized by Microsoft Corporation, the Internet Archive, 2007, University of California libraries may be used non-commercial personnel, research, educational purposes, as any fair use may not be indexed as commercial services. The New World Order by Samuel Zane Batten. We are laying foundations of the New World, said David Lloyd of Georgia. David Lloyd George, Philadelphia, American Baptist Publication Society of Houston, Chicago, St. Louis, New York, Los Angeles, Kansas City, and Seattle. Copyrighted by Gilbert N. Brink, Secretary, published in March 1999. 1919. The preface. The men of today stand upon the peak of the in Darren. Behind lies with the world having known its trials and failures. Beyond lies an uncharted seas, the great unknown time. The World War represents a passing of the old order. The end of the new epoch. The new day is begun as a beginning of the new achievements up. The old order passes from the view. The new world is rising upon our vision. The world never came. The world can never again be as it has been. The house has been collapsed. The structural discredited. The period of the reconstruction is imperative. The men shall know that the defective principles of the old order must be kept out. What are the true principles that should be built in the very foundations of the house that it was that is to be? What kind of world order do we want? What are the principles, ideals that should guide us in our planning? What are the immediate things of our efforts, and what are the ultimate ends? What are the forces, the factors on which we may account for aid and inspiration? The questions for first importance in this hour. The little book suggests the answer. This little book suggests the answer to some of these questions, but it's a simple outline of the great subject. It's not an attempt to discuss social order and the international situation in detail, or interpret in all possible hearings the new policies and programs. It does seek to interpret the sum of the movements of time and to state some of the questions that they are being hearing, to suggest a direction of movement in social effort. A few aspects of the great social tasks are noted. The constant recognizing, however, that these must be viewed together in relationship to one enterprise. This question of international justice is closely related to the condition of economic life at home. And in a view of the fact that the settlement of the issues pending upon the people of the nation is necessary to discussion, question, reconstruction, be serious undertaking by leaders that thought in church and state more than that the people must have minded understanding the question issued in the heart undertaken of the great enterprises for the kingdom of God. Some suggestions for further studying the questions discussed will be found in the reference appended January 1st, 1919. The contents. Chapter 1 is the old and the new. Chapter 2 will be rebuilding the community. Chapter 3, democratization in industry. Chapter 4, the socialization of a nation. Chapter 5, the reconstruction of international life. And Chapter 6, the church and the crisis. The old and the new. Behold, I am making all things new. The Revelation 21:5. And this is the word, yet once significant in the removing of all these things that are shaken, as the things that have been made, and those things which are not shaken may remain. Hebrews 12:27. But according to his promise, we look for new heavens and new earth, whether and dwell in righteousness. 2 Peter 3:13. Don't be always talking about the back when we are before the world. Don't always talk about going back to where you were before in the world. Get a really new world. Premier Lloyd George. Cal Okuma. Once the oldest must be experienced, the ablest statesman of Japan, watching the present conflict of the other side of the globe, declares that nothing less than the death of European civilization. Draft report of the general policy reconstruction of the British Labour Party. He must he must have a callous soul who can pass through times that these are not to hear the voice who call man answering or lose his soul. The country needs you. The kingdom of God on the earth needs you. The cause of Christ is hard at best, and righteousness is having a heavy battle in the earth that needs you. Harry Emerson Fosdick. The old and the new world. The old and the new. The world in the transition period when the sun set down on Friday night, July 31st, 1914. It was set upon the order of the forever past in the World War. Whatever may changes it brings, world geography represents a close age of the opening of the new epoch. It began as a world that developed a world revolution. It marks the change of it makes the change in front of the universe. Things that are state of flux, even in the society process of history that have been heated to the furnace sevenfold and even into the fires, have gone. The ideas and the ideals of men, the institution of society, the policy of the nations, the fluid material of life, ready to be run into the new molds and be hardened into form. There never has been such an hour of the 1,000 years past. There's never been such an hour for 1,000 years past, that there may be any another such hour for 1,000 years to come. This makes it once a crisis opportunity of our time. 1. The present hour of veritable judgment day. The root of judgment is the revelation disclosure now hidden. Things are brought to light and thoughts of many hearts is revealed. Defects in social order and foundation of society are made to appear. The fact that the old order produced such fruits that are such fruits that as everywhere sees evidence of the foundation are unsound. Here's the World War itself. Its greatest calamity has been befallen on the human race. In our nation it is discussed serious situation that almost makes our heart stop beating. In the industrial world we face condition of strife, conclusion, but life little short of civil war. And the fact that such strife exists that should conclusive something is wrong with the principles and method of industry. In modern society, such evil diseases, poverty, crime, and misery. The fact that such things exist points the fundamental defects in social order. All this contains is a challenge and summons. In revealing fires of judgment, the world is gaining a new vision. Upon the end of this time of the breaking of the light of the new social order, the outstanding fact of today is rediscovered in the kingdom of God. To the world, that this comes almost as new revelation from earth. For 1,800 years, men have been believed in the kingdom and have prayed for its coming. But now, at the last conception, it becomes larger and more true. We coming to see the kingdom of God in the Christ conception never means anything less of righteous men's society on earth. Christ has come not to condemn the world, but to save the world. He has come to reveal the kingdom in heaven, to realize the kingdom of earth. He has come to not alone to save the people out of the world, but fit them for a way for the heaven, but to make heaven a here. He has come to not patch up human society, make the world a little less intolerable for men, but to make all things new and create new social order. And the new vision of the summons of the great new task, the men of the God are summoned to arise in the Christian social order. We are called to find the defects of the present social order to lay the new Christian foundations. We are called Christian hopes to be reconstruction, the social order, and according to with the will of the God, ideal of the kingdom. This is the largest undertaking, but not less than this can meet the situation to satisfy the Christian ideal. We need to be more piece of work, halfway measures, the fundamental defects of society itself, its organized Roman and pagan bases, and not just Christian foundations. We can make it need, therefore, not by patchwork reconstruction radical throughout. The Christian has come to me not to patch up the old, but to make all things new. Undertaking the vital time, first of all, what kind of the world shall live in these coming days? Will it be the same old war, the same old evil, the same old misery? Will it contain in with itself unspeakable tragedies as of world war? Will nations have learned of such infinity costs of lessons, disciplines, controlled, nevertheless revert to older older order or allow themselves into injustice to have their right of way? Will employers and workers remain a part of the industry while work being scene of strife and conclusion? While society has shown the interest in welfare of the child health of the people, forgotten the interest when the piece that comes and falls back in the old condition. In case it does not matter how much war goes on. If the older children must face such evils, endure such agonies, and it does not matter much which side victorious. But if the war switch shows the defects of social order, at the same time shows the way of the progress, will we be paying to the price of victory? And if though the smoke of the battlefield tears the soil, we can catch the clear visions of the better world, we can accept our cross. Bear it with joy and confidence. Let men see the hope of the social destruction and wrapped up in the victorious outcome of the war. We have a unified nation, have been filled with inspired devotion. The people who united in the prosecution of the war, because they are inspired with hope of better world after war. On this question, we have some vital testimony. The Archbishop of York, he visits the United States, spoke clearly on the charge that he come over the people of Britain. He declared the hope of the future of Britain lies in possible extent with new spirit carried into the social reconstruction. He writes, so far as I have been able to observe, there is a great indifference in the effect of the war has had on the public opinion of England and the United States. We feel that we consider very wide, deep way, whole character of social system. This through the social reconstruction is the only less constantly in the minds of the people the immediate progress of the war itself. We all feel the war comes to us at a time with becoming conscious that our social system revealing of the very deep defects. Great trust is that a spirit's common fellowship of which the war has come, all that may be transmuted after the war and impulse toward the social reconstruction, carried through the same spirit of fellowship and sacrifice. He tells us further that how the soldiers in the front feel this. They seem to respond readily with enthusiasm to the prospect that they will return to take place in the building of the new and better built social system. Indeed, this coming to fulfill a larger purpose of the consciousness of the people most people then appeal to the solidness and enthusiasm of the war. The ready response of the later we take granted is our nation way. On the forefront of our minds, full thoughts of what has been done at home after the war is won. Secondly, if we have a better world, we must plan for it. Now that the war is over, men face the task of rebuilding waste places, restoring, and many desolations. He has risen to be question which makes the supreme compromise opportunity of this hour. Will men, wary and visionless, attempt simply to rebuild the older order and or restore things as they were? Or will they, taught by bitter sorrow and loss of sacrifice, undertaken the reconstruction of social order that shall once seek the divine ideal, prevent the recurrence of such a calamity? Be it noted that not in question whether the changes are coming or not. Greater changes are fordham and inevitability cannot be withstood. But the question whether they should be real or radical reconstruction or mere patching up of the social order. In question whether these changes shall be mere shifting of the material forces, whether mighty movements shall be once arose directly by the moral and spiritual forces. It is impossible for the acquaintancy in the present social order. It is impossible to restore the social status quo ante and take up this old story again. If it is necessary for the men to accept divine summons and undertake the task of building a better social order, but in this what spirit shall be undertaken of this work of the social reconstruction? What are the things that they are already called to do? It is evident the real struggle is within the real conquest is ourselves. Let us conquer ourselves and our cowardice, our sloth, our selfishness, our tenderness to postpone action. Let us things that drift, our temptation to compromise. Halfway measuring, we shall develop an inflexible morale and an unconquerable spirit. As Sir Baden-Powell has well said, true victory lies not in such of the actual tactical gains of the battlefield today as the quality of men who have to carry on the work of the country after the war. The real struggle is at the home with ourselves. In our minds, the home and in our minds, the heart and wills. The war is tremendous. The tragic fact that destiny of humanity for 1,000 years will be affected, and yet the war needs to be seen as a true perspective, for it is an incident, the age-long struggle of human toward justice, truth, and kingdom of God. Let us see the real meaning of the struggle. Let us see the light ahead. Let us know that the victory for democracy is an immeasurable gain for humanity. We have conquered ourselves. We have already gained the real victory. 3. The people of the nations must interpret, develop new policies and principles. This war has begun as a world war, but it has become a world revolution. It differs from the war that had begun before the number of the nations involved. But the most significant of all, it differs from the way the nations have been compelled to adopt new policies affirming new principles. We are too near the events of the sea to fulfill the significance of these changes. Many of them are in the germ only. It is too early to know that they're full fruitage. It is worthwhile, however, to note that some of the principles affirmed the policy suggested. A. The community. The human loss and social wastage and infant mortality. The moral national necessity of child conservation. The social handbook, moral dangers of alcoholism, venereal diseases, and the necessity of the determined effort to eliminate and prevent these. The danger of loss and disease and premature death. Demand and the united action to prevent disease and reduce the death rate. The danger of the loss and crime, degeneracy, and the determination to make community life safe and sanitary, wholesome, and moral. The relation between bad housing, family dissolution, social evils, the efforts to secure for each family adequate housing at reasonable rates, the danger and vicious amusement and injuries, recreation, the community effort and to provide adequate, wholesome, and recreation for all. B. 7. The dangers or loss of industrial strife and new appreciation of the meaning of the value of social justice. 8. The conviction of the industry and interest in society, most severe society, it is most therefore come under the supervision of society, be coordinated with its other factors. 9. The recognition of industry as a partnership. The workers must have a real voice in direction of the industry and at equal ability of share in the product. The disappearance of the class distinction of the solidarity of all interests in economic process. C. National. The conviction of the surplus wealth belongs to the society, the effort to use it for the common good. The conviction of the property, skill, life are social stewardships that have social obligations. They must therefore be held and used for common welfare. The conception of the nation's welfare as a supreme concern with the policy that everything shall contribute to this end, every person must do useful work. The necessity of the united people and a positive democracy leading to the creation into an efficiency national discipline. 15. A new emphasis upon democracy and a growth demanding for its realization in political and industrial life. 16. The closer cooperation of the church, a new emphasis upon social content of the gospel, new valuation of the central truths of Christianity, justice, love, brotherhood, and self-sacrifice. 12. International. 12. The principles of mortality, justice, rights, and brotherhood are universal in scope. Nations of the equal and men have obligation to observe them. D. International. The principles of morality, justice, righteousness, brotherhood, and are universal in scope and nation equal with men under obligation to observe them. The creation of international mind with the world's conscience and a world patriotism. The loyalty of men of one national group must expand into a larger loyalty to all mankind. The world to be made by safe for democracy, right to every people to liberty and self-government. The interdependency of the nations, the certainty that the conditions and policy of one people affect all. The consequence and necessity of all people taking such action may be required to secure justice for all and protect each. The The destruction of every arbitrary power anywhere that can separately, secretly, of this single choice distribute the peace of the world, or if cannot be destroyed, at the least reduction of virtual impotency. That one's the destruction of every arbitrary power that anywhere can separately or secretly or of single choice distribute the peace of the world, or if it cannot be destroyed, all least of reduction to virtual impotency. 22. The settlement of every question, whether the territory of sovereignty or economic arrangement or political relationship, upon basis of free acceptance of the settlement by the people immediately concerned, not upon the basis of the material interest, advantage of any other nation or people which may desire different settlement for the sake of its own exterior influence or mastery. The consent of all nations to be governed in their conduct toward each other and by their same principles of honor and of respect for the common law of civilized society, govern individual citizens of all modern states in their relations with one another to the end of all promises. The covenants may be sacredly observed, no private plots or conspiracies hatched, no selfish injuries wrote with impunity, or in a mutual trust established upon handsome foundation of mutual respect of right. 24. The establishment of an organization of peace which shall make it certain of the combined power of free nations will check every invasion of its right to invasion of the right to serve the peace, to make peace, justice, more source of affording a defiant tribunal of opinion to which all must submit, by which every international readjustment that can be amicably agreed upon people directly concerned shall be sanctioned. These principal policies are significant and revolutionary upon a new chapter in social development and international life. It is too early in the day for one to indicate all the implementation applications, and in fact it will require many years, involve many experiments, interpret and realize them. It would be unwise, therefore, to attempt to frame an elaborate program of social advance international organization, but it is too early for use to consider these principles and prepare ourselves for coming changes. The most unwise policy is to live only for the day. Let things drift and have no large program at all. Social progress at the bottom is moral, spiritual matter. It depends upon ideals and ideals upon human hearts and wills. It must therefore be understood that planned for and willed by men. These principles policy must be taken seriously by the men and nations to securely hearty cooperation of the working men to solidify settlement within the nation. And to maintain morale, to unify the allied peoples, divided the enemy nations. All the allied peoples, the governments have been affirmed these principles. These declared, the nations must not be regarded as mere death promises, forgotten as soon as the crisis is past. The patient begins to breathe easily, and again they must be taken seriously and must be made effective in the life of the world. To treat these declarations as empty words, mere scraps of paper, would stultify the government themselves, would drive the people into bitter revolt. If that is foolish course should be attempted, it would be react upon the nation's government as a fault. If a false policy should be followed, it would never again be possible to catch the workers and the people with such words. Fortunately, the governments of the allied nations at least take the principles at their face value and intend to follow out of these policies to the end. But outcoming will depend upon the rank and the file of the people. The policies and the principles are democratic in impulse, if not informed, then the reason. Therefore, the full realization will depend upon the intelligence of the people and their understanding of the issue at stake. The democratic ideal can be realized as far as the men learn to cooperate and sacrifice for the common good. This brings us to the next item, 4. The preparation of the people for the work of reconstruction. The war does not end with the fighting of the stop and the treaties are signed. The war has been conducted unparalleled fierceness, and it has intensified national hatred. The defeated nations will be sullen and resentful. They will think that they lost the cause, and they will plan some way of retrieving their loss of the fortune. It will be generations at least, perhaps it will be centuries before the people of the world can trust one another and live in friendship. Unless these nations can see the situation and can adopt just and fair measures, and will lay upon themselves wrath against the day of the wrath. Unless these see carefully underlying causes of the war and remove these, they will sow the seeds of the future wars. More widespread and destructive. Real people cannot come in by fighting. Real peace cannot come by fighting. It must be based upon international goodwill and fair dealing. It is necessary, therefore, that the nations consider the things that they are that they know now, the things that make them peaceful, and they prepare for just peaceful world order. This work of reconstruction is hard and long task, when we must make the mistake of supposing that the changes are not necessary will come to themselves. We will not suppose either that mere affirmation of certain principles, however the good is the end of the campaign. As a material of the fact that affirmation is simply the first step of a long process to put the new principles and policies into effect. It means of hard, bitter struggling. The people must be instructed in the meanwhile sweep of these ideas. The society will have to face the dead inherited masses of people, and the dead inherited mass of people, and the studied opposition of interest groups. Many experiences may have been tried, and some mistakes will be made. The way into the better world lies through the land of the sacrifice and service. The most necessary thing at this time, the creation of the state of mind in the people which will make them willingly to undertake the work of social, national, international reconstruction. The nation needs an intelligent, just, Christian body of public opinion. We need a sacrificial attitude of the mind which will make them willing to pay the price of social advance. Yes, significance and disturbance as here it was in democratic people are failing. Most signally, one listens in vain of the large discussion of the great questions in church assemblies. One finds almost nothing in the direction of the organs of the public opinion. The nation has declared against secret diplomacy in favor of the democratic ideals, yet the people are for ignoring questions of international justice and committing them to their rulers. We have affirmed our other faith and principles in government derive their just powers and the consent of the government governed. Yet the people do not seem to know what are the deeper issues at stake and how changes may be accomplished. The so-called leaders of the nation in the church and state seem to have no vision of the new world order and have no word to offer. In the Britain, it may be said that the growing up of the apparitions of coming, changing, and brave effort to prepare for it. The British Labour leaders have put up for the pronouncement which one of the wisest and most states. Unlikely documents thus far produced. It has been aptly called the Magna Charta of the New Democracy. The American and the recognized leaders in both church and labor world have lagged behind and have spoken no commanding message. The blindness to the large issues that is unconcerned future, this absence of any large program, one of the most ominous facts of the hour. Part of it is due timidly to the confusion in which much is chargeable the democratic habit in things and thinking of the next campaign, ignoring the larger future. The way out of this way forward. Don't be always talking about going back to where you were before the war. You really got to get a real new world, said Lloyd George. You cannot have the world as it was. It was liably on Jesus Christ. It was shame upon the name. The older order is broken and discredited. The molds of the new world are being made. Do we now Do we know what kind of world we want? Do we know what next steps in Christian progress? Have we faith, courage to set about the making of the new world? Can the church and the state give the men a wise, strong leadership in this great hour? The men of the today must build the world of tomorrow. There has been such a challenge to church. Never such an opportunity before. There has never been such a need for men of faith and vision. The new principles which have been affirmed often identifiably and tentatively must be interpreted must be in their sweep. Most of them incorporated in the human thinking. The new policies that have been accepted into the past, into the part of the least most developed and become the settled policies of the nation. The new impulses awakened in the spirit of the self-sacrifice evoked may be conserved in new national institutions, new international guarantees. If men could forget lessons learned at each of the frightful costs, we might well despair the man's ability to learn anything. If people will heed call of God and follow the Christ and the task of social reconstruction, they might really shape the outlines of the new, better world. References to forestick the challenge of the present crisis, flaunts the new horizon of the church and state, orchard the old outlook of the region, and usher the challenge of the future. Chapter 2, Rebuilding the Community.